countdown to the last comic shop in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Your systems are offline.
Hey, it is now time for more of the Last Comic Shop podcast.
That's right, we are opening up the shop to newbies to help them find their way underneath this comic book tent.
And we're keeping the lights on, although very dimly lit, sometimes with opaque lighting as the flashlights zoom up and around the comic shop, looking for evidence of crime.
That's right. It would be a crime if you missed this week's episode of The Last Comic Shop, because it's all about true crime. It's all about crime noir. It's about crime noir comics. That's right. I'm the host of the most, Andy Larson. I'm joined by Chad Smith and J.A. Scott, as always, as well as our good friend Mikey Wood, who's stopping by because he cannot help himself when it comes to a good crime noir story. Like, again, right. I think the first time I ever talked with you, Mikey, about comic books was about Torpedo, right? Like, that was one of the first times we ever had you on anything, was we did Torpedo. And believe it or not, the book that we have on this week's show, I'm going to say right now, has Torpedo in it. They may not call him Torpedo, but that's Torpedo. But long story short, J.A., what's the book we're reading this week?
We are reading Noir Burlesque by Enrico Marini, translated by Dan Christensen from the original Italian. Yes.
It recently came out again in hardback as well as trade paperback from Hard Case Crime, which is one of my favorite sub-imprints of Titan Comics out there in England. So read a lot of their books. And so this is my pick this week. And I hope that you will all enjoy it. But before we get into that comic book, obviously we want to give you an opening salvo into true crime. And that's why we've brought the beautiful, the wonderful, the talented Nicole Larson on today's show.
It's a lot of false accolades you just gave me there. So evidently, I'm going to be telling you guys about some true crime comic book related cases.
Ooh. All right. So without further ado, let's get started on our true crime segment entitled 4 Color Crime.
Hang on, I just need a second. All right, go ahead.
All right, we're turning on our true crime voices. Case number 1. Nick Cage is really dumb. That's the title of it. In the year 2000, Nicolas Cage had his copies of Action Comics number 1, which featured the first appearance of Superman, Detective Comics number 27, which had the first appearance of Batman, and Marvel Comics Mystery number 71, which featured the Golden Age Human Torch and Submariner, stolen from his Los Angeles home where they had been mounted in frames on his wall. The Action Comics issue is thought to be one of the best preserved of the remaining 100 original copies still known to exist, with a grade of 9.0. Cage had bought it in 1997 for $150,000. The head of LAPD's art theft detail, Donald Herchek, was put on the case. But unfortunately, since Cage did not notice that the comics had been stolen for several weeks, this gave the robbers quite a head start in avoiding capture. In 2002, a tip finally came through that the book was being stored in a safety deposit box in Tennessee. Infamously, that tip turned out to be misleading, as it was just a replica of the world-famous cover wrapped around a catalog for women's lingerie. A decade later, the issue finally resurfaced in April 2011 when someone bought the contents of an abandoned San Fernando Valley storage locker and found the treasure inside. Afterwards, Storage Wars auctioneer Dan Dotson helped broker a deal to reunite Cage with his book. The reunion was short-lived, however, as less than a year after the book's recovery, Cage sold it in an online auction for $2,161,000, the highest price ever paid for a comic book at the time. Although Cage's copy of Marvel Comics Mystery number 71 has also since been recovered, Cage's copy of Detective Comics number 27 remains at large.
Ooh.
Dun, dun, dun.
Was he dumb to put him on his wall? Like,
No, he was dumb not to have security cameras, dumbass.
Yeah.
Like, what Hollywood star doesn't have security cameras and locks on the doors?
Yeah, like I'm all for like if you got it, show it. I don't like people who like buy the things and just hoard them away secretly, just knowing they're like I know that I have it and nobody else has. But first of all, from a conservatancy point of view, like they could get really sun bleached and ruin the whole thing.
And I am assuming he had some sort of special glass and
Probably.
they were in a special room.
Probably.
But, I mean, usually, like if you have a Monet or something, you have some sort of security system to protect your investment.
Yeah, but like he's Nicolas Cage. Maybe he thought his craziness would be enough. You know, like I don't know, but like he needed cameras.
And then my second thought was maybe it was an inside job, but then obviously that would have been a pretty small number of people for them to look at, and you would have thought they would have figured it out. So
yeah.
And who forgets that they have Action Comics #1 in a storage locker?
And let's not forget, comics have taught us you need to put tracers on all these things. Why does he not have the equivalent of that spider tracer on that book? So when it starts disappearing, he knows where it is. Those Apple iTags, they're everywhere these days.
It was 2000. That was before all that technology existed. I will say this as an interesting side note. They are actually thinking about making this whole story into a movie.
Oh, come on.
In which Nicolas Cage is hopefully going to play himself.
No.
They're going to the stealings of the comics.
Can they make it into like a National Treasure type of
Right? Yeah, it's just another National Treasure sequel. You know, that's all.
Nick
What's in the
Cage
comic
is a
book?
national treasure.
I can't believe he turned around and sold it, though.
Didn't he have to end up paying for a divorce or something? That's why he had to sell a lot of his stuff.
I don't know, but that's a pretty good return on investment. $150,000 to turn it into $2.1 million. Jeez, way to go on that.
But I did want to force the conversation about the spider tracers because that's the reason why people have ankle bracelets now. Because there was a judge who used to read Spider-Man comics, and Spidey would put all his tracers on people, and that's how they track the criminals. And the judge was like, we should do that. And so they came up with the ankle monitors. That was the impetus for that.
That's great comic book trivia right there.
Yeah, and it goes along with the true crime. Let's go into case number 2 real quick.
All right, case number 2. Let me turn back on the newscast NPR voice. There's a good chance that collectors of original Marvel Comics interior artwork are buying stolen goods. Dateline, New York City, early 1978. Marvel's warehouse, which by all reports at the time was one step away from being condemned, was broken into and tossed. Pages upon pages of original artwork were thrown about, but as far as employees could tell, none had gone missing. Then editor Jim Shooter ordered the artwork gathered up and moved to filing cabinets in his office, where it stayed until late 1979, when Marvel moved their headquarters to the 6th floor of 575 Madison Avenue. The artwork was boxed up and transported to a new warehouse, save for one box containing hundreds of pages of art, which somehow ended up in the staff lunchroom at Marvel's new office. Shooter ordered then office manager Bernie Schachtman to have the box moved to the warehouse, but when Schachtman went to gather it from the lunchroom, it was gone. Grown legs, as they say, and went straight out the freight elevator. No one knows what artwork was in the box, nobody knows who took it, and it was never found.
So if they don't know what art was in the box and no one knows who took it, did it even exist?
Right.
What is Schrodinger's box?
Yes.
They do believe it may have contained thousands of pages of Kirby artwork. You also have to understand that up until the early 80s, nobody gave a shit about that stuff. Stan Lee would have tour groups and he would just give kids pages of original art. There was no value at that point. So who knows? They think it could have been tossed. They think that if some of that missing Kirby artwork could have been destroyed by rats or leaky roofs. So
Maybe the employees used them as napkins.
Yeah, you never know. But because they can't trace the provenance of these original pages that are being sold by dealers, they don't know how they got them. So you never know.
In Hey Kids Comics, didn't our pal Howard Chaykin allege that his mentor Gil Kane was stealing original art and selling it out the back to dealers? That was just how that business worked. Very crooked.
Yeah.
Let's move on to case number 3. on 4-Color Crime.
Back to the NPR voice. After a failed district assembly run and 20 years as a corporate lawyer, Anthony Ciaffolo broke. Taking money he had embezzled through fake law bills. He began purchasing and laundering money through high-end comics from heritage auctions. Police found $9 million of embezzled evidence, including Batman #2 and eventually Action Comics #1. Ciaffolo's goose was cooked, and his wife was in on it too, and they disappeared. Locked away while the police searched for the Ciaffolos, some of the comics found their way on the outside too. Comic folks are a meticulous bunch. Super rare comics like All-Star Comics #3 or Submariner 17 have distinctive features. Comic nerds noticed the distinctive errors on the books. That's right, they noticed the corner foxing. Turns out the investigators were just as crooked as the criminals themselves. After selling the pinched publications at Wizard World's 2012 comic convention, comic buyers paid $70,000. The dots were connected and everyone went to jail or got in trouble. The end. That's Chad's.
I ran out of time.
For all our audience members, Chad did all his on little post-it notes, which was great. This was my favorite story, Chad. Like, you shared this story with me, and I really did think this was one of the best ones we found.
Did they find the dude and his wife?
Yeah, everybody went to jail or got in trouble in the end, didn't you see?
Well, right, but I didn't know if that meant they found them. I thought it was just the investigators that then took the stuff that they had recovered and then sold it.
No, it turns out he got off lesser than he would have because the evidence had been pinched and, there was all sorts of shadiness all around on all different sides. And so the penalties, like I said, ended up being lesser than they potentially could have been.
Did some of the evidence show up in a storage locker?
There were storage lockers. There were places that's where the things disappeared from. But the problem was people noticed the small defects. They noticed the foxing, the little mold in the corner on that All-Star Comics #3 in that distinctive spot. And then it came to light, oh no, these people that spent $70,000 at Wizard World in 2012, they had been fleeced.
So wait, so they would sell the comics at an auction, they'd get all the money, and then somehow they would get them back, and
they would take their laundered money through the fake lawyer bills. Mm-hmm. They would use it to purchase books at the heritage auctions. And collectors like, wait a minute, Submariner 17 shouldn't go for that much money. But then, I don't know what they were planning on doing with it, but people figured it out, and the company they were working for started following the trail, and that's when the Ciaffolos fled. The investigators then pilfered that evidence, tried to turn that into cash on their own end, and ended up screwing out some comic buyers out of $70K because they bought those stolen goods. But eventually, like I said, people knew it was damaged goods.
There was other collectibles, right? Like he had sports memorabilia and this and that. Like there was other stuff, not just the comics that he was laundering this kizash into originally. And I just can't get across the investigators then trying to then also be bad guys.
The worst thing that ever happened was when people started to realize that this shit is worth money.
Yeah.
Like it really is. It's like this is precious to people.
I wonder how much money we have sitting in this shelf next to me or up on these walls.
Shh, quiet, shush.
Oh, we're gonna get robbed.
$0 American dollars.
Yeah. Have you invested in security cameras?
Yes is the answer, Nicole.
Yeah.
Yes.
Take my advice. Get cameras. That's my best.
We're not Nick Cage, though. Come on.
Right.
Let's move on to case number 4, the final case of 4-Color Crime.
All right, and our last case is the case of Harry Donenfeld. National Comics Publications, the direct predecessor to modern-day DC Comics, was formed in 1938 when Harry Donenfeld, along with Jack Leibowitz, forced their partner, Malcolm Wheeler Nicholson, into deep debt and then took over his arm of the business. Donenfeld's questionable actions didn't start or end with the way he strong-armed his partner out of the company. During the 1920s, his publishing company, Martin Press, saw a vast expansion in capital. It's speculated that Donenfeld, through links with gangster Frank Costello, moved alcohol, now illegal during the Prohibition, along with legitimate Canadian pulp paper across the border. In November 1933, he formed a company called Super Magazines, which ended up specializing in the mixed girly genre pulps, spicy adventure, spicy detective, spicy mystery, and spicy western. In 1934, after getting charged with obscenity and narrowly escaping jail, Donenfeld changed the name of Super Magazines to Culture Publications. The fourth publication following Donenfeld's takeover of Wheeler Nicholson's National Allied Publications in 1938 would be Action Comics issue number 1, the introduction of Superman. Donenfeld enjoyed not only healthy comic book sales, but also in merchandising such as toys, costumes, and even a radio show featuring the character. At the end of 1941, Donenfeld's comic business took in $2.6 million. Joe Shuster and Jerry Siegel had sold the rights for the character to National Allied Publication, so as Donenfeld became rich, they continued on flat employee fees. Donenfeld died in 1965, having never recovered from a head injury sustained in a fall the week before he was set to marry his second wife. Donenfeld was posthumously named in 1985 as one of the honorees by DC Comics in the company's 50th anniversary publication, 50 Who Made DC Great.
He made all those smut books.
Yes.
That's right. He ran hooch.
booze.
That's right. Hooch and smut books and spicy westerns. I need to get me some of them.
Hey now, I want to know about this fall. Do you think he actually fell? Or do you think
A week before he was set to get married, too. And then he hung on for like 3 years, convalescing, and then died.
Sounds like he was kind of an a-hole.
Yeah.
He got his partner into debt so that he could buy out his part of the business.
And then he was the one that set the standard for screwing over Schuster and Siegel out of all the Superman royalties.
Cutthroat.
I mean,
and that's, because you also have to understand too, it's the same kind of thing. They didn't know any of this was going to amount to anything back then. So
he was making
there were
millions off of Superman like from day one.
In the 1940s or whatever, right?
Of all that George Reeve money.
A lot of money.
George Reeve, that's another bad thing connected to Superman.
Well, thank you so much, Nicole, for reading our 4 cases on today's show. We come back next week. Maybe
next week?
Yeah, you can come back next week. How about you pick a book? What book do you want to read on this show?
There have been a couple that have been sitting on our shelves for a while. You know what we never got around to reading?
What did we never get around?
That March book.
Oh, that's
right. You guys want to read March?
I think that's a great suggestion. So yeah, next week come back. We'll read March, and until then, make sure that you're sticking around for more Last Comic Shop right after these commercial breaks. We'll be back with Noir Burlesque, which actually deals with some of these gangster kind of I don't know if this Donenfeld guy's in it, but there's some other gangsters. Stay tuned.
Gangsta?
Yeah.
Looking to save money on your collectible supplies? Whether it's comics, cards, sports memorabilia, or miscellaneous pop culture bric-a-brac, make sure to use promo code LCSPOD to get 10% off your orders at bcwsupplies.com. Not only does it get you a discount on BCW's already low prices, but using LCSPOD at checkout is an amazing way to show support to the Last Comic Shop podcast, the most incredible comic book podcast on the airwaves. So if you are in need of collectible supplies, head out to bcwsupplies.com and use promo code LCSPOD today. That's promo code LCSPOD. Cheers!
Hi everyone, I'm Nick Palatichuk. I'm an independent film director and screenwriter. I'm also an independent comic book artist and creator. I want to let you know about my podcast, the St. Paul Filmcast. It's a weekly podcast wherein I interview other independent filmmakers and other artists from the Twin Cities area. You can find the show on Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, and Amazon Radio, as well as distributor Podbean. You can follow the show on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So, if you're interested in how independent films get made, or the process of filmmaking, also, if you're interested in other artists' process and works as well, tune into my show, the St. Paul Filmcast, where it's not over till the guests say it's over.
You're not
All right, you guys and dolls, you mooks, you palookas, you tough guys and dames and whatever, we're back. We're bringing with us some hard case crime. That's right, this week we're going to be reviewing Noir Burlesque. And one of you palookas is going to give me the who's-its, and one of you other palookas is going to give me the what's-its, and then the whole bunch of jamokes is going to do the things that jamokes do. I don't even know the words I'm saying anymore. Who's got my who's-its?
I do. This was done by Enrico Marini and then translated from the original French by Dan Christensen, edited by Dan Lockwood, lettering by Chromatic Limited, and graphic design by Enrico Marini and Philippe Ravon. It was originally published in French by Dargaud Benelux, republished in English, and then we are reading a republication of the English, as Andrew said, that he saw from Hard Case Crimes. That's how he came upon it. But Europe Comics, I think, was the main imprint.
All right, that's a lot of intel. That brings us to what in the world is happening in this Noir Burlesque, which we read out of 2 separate collections from Hard Case Crimes. Is that Mikey?
Yeah.
Mikey, you're on the spot.
Yeah, so Slick comes back to town after being away in the military for years, and he wants to take care of his brother-in-law's debt that he owes to a local mobster. And unfortunately, that local mobster is engaged to Slick's old flame, now calling herself Caprice, a burlesque dancer, a classy burlesque dancer. And then the bullets start to fly, and the turns start to twist, and the crosses start to double. And it's good classic noir stuff.
Yes.
There you go, and it's classy as it is. Fair warning, this is not for the kiddos. It's a seedy tale of it's despair and darkness and murder and double crossing and occasionally
sex.
naked ladies.
Sex.
Yes. No.
Bullets and boobs.
I mean, taking a page out of, I said it earlier in the show, this book totally reminded me of the first time that I really read a comic book with Mikey on any of our podcasts, and that was Torpedo. Like, this is like, again, very similar to Torpedo, except for the fact that Slick is actually a character you want to pull for. Everything about this guy is like super cool. Like, he is the man, almost out of like an Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips book, where you just can't help but like Slick. He's like Parker and all those great Donald Westlake heroes, like all just rolled into one.
It's very Parker. It is very, very Parker. I mean, it's just, this book gets by, honestly, on the artwork. The artwork is utterly magnificent. It is an absolutely beautiful book. But, plot-wise, it's your standard thing. It really is. It's your standard thing. Seen it all before, read it all before. But like those things always are, it's the packaging that makes it so cool. And it is cool. It's a cool
And
book.
that artwork is primarily black and white. Feels like it was watercolored, painted on. But then every so often there's a red car, or Caprice always has red hair. So red is like an accent color, very sparingly used, but used usually on women or vehicles to accent a page or a scene.
Yeah, accent
nipples
the sex.
too. Nipples are red.
Accent the sex. Anytime you see Caprice, she's not only got the red hair, but like her, she's got the red lips. It just pops, and it makes me just I don't know. I mean, I knew what I was getting into this book. It was 11 o'clock at night. It was the first time I had read it, and I got to the scene where Caprice is doing this dance, and I hope it's the finale, because I'm sure a lot of dudes were pretty final after that, where she's in this bathtub, and then these guys just come over with champagne and just go to town. It's just I get feel steamy just thinking about it, to be honest.
All right.
It's all the art.
It's getting yucky. Let's emphasize the red is also there for the violence and the blood spray.
Yeah.
There's lots of violence and blood spray. This is America.
And the Picasso painting.
Yeah.
The Picasso-esque.
the ink washes are really nice. It gives it that sort of dirty gray thing. But like even the like angles of the panel, like the panels are not the panels themselves. The panels are square panels generally. It's your kind of standard. But the I guess for lack of a better term, camera angles within those panels are like so nice. Lots of overhead stuff. Lots of like Dutch angles.
The points of view.
There you go. Yeah, it's just a really cool. And a lot of these hard case crime books really are. I wish I had more of them, but they're just, you know, they take up space and they're expensive. But this is worth it. Just even if you're like, oh, I've seen all this, it's just worth it to look at it. And I'm a little familiar with his work from there's a series he did called Eagles of Rome, which was about Julius Caesar and gladiators and lots of sex in that one too. And then there's another thing he did called The Raven, I think, and which I haven't read, but yeah, his work is like, oh my God. I mean, his writing isn't, it does that noir crime trope very, very well.
Right.
Like it's
and
very,
I kind of want to point that out, Mikey, that you mentioned that it's stuff that you've seen before, but I didn't think any of the characters that he used, whether it was Slick and how cool he is, even from the first scene when he's breaking into that jewelry store and he's talking to the cashier behind the register. Where's the back door? Because like his one partner leaves him, and she's like, "Is this your first time with a man? No, robbery." And then he leaves her with the pearls. Come back anytime. It was so good. But there's just from that to the main bad guy. Gosh, I can't even remember his name. What's the name bad guy?
Rex, it doesn't matter.
Rex, who runs the club, and he's got the pencil thin mustache, and he's got these awesome guys working for him. He's got the one short gangster who used to be, in a movie star, and Slick has some great one-liners.
Yeah. It's not just Rex, by the way. Rex McGinty. Give me a more cliched gangster name than Rex McGinty.
And then there's the big ox dude that has like the red hair and like the high and tight. Yeah. And eventually, then in volume 2, they have to go on this heist to get this art print from this other gangster, and you meet the gangster's daughter, who was a super cool character. You meet this nephew of Rex, who's just like a screw up, this young punk kid that I just kept on thinking would sound like Shia LaBeouf, because he reminded me of Mutt Williams from that Indiana Jones movie. I was just like, oh, this guy's terrible.
And now, and then an American Indian with a tomahawk,
who's Hungarian.
Yeah, when he's Hungarian. That was
it was clever. Yeah.
And Slick has his best friend from childhood ends up being like the cop who ends up like coming to the rescue of his sister. And she's like, hey, would you like some coffee? Like, it was just, there was so many good characters, and Caprice was great. This was a wonderful book.
Yeah. That fake Native American guy sure knows how to throw a hatchet. The plucky Pearl, boy, she was great. Don't you want a kiss? I don't want nothing. Like, there's so many, and even little Timmy at the end, he's like, yeah, don't worry, my uncle, he's a government enforcer or something. What does he call his uncle at the end?
Government agent or something.
He's a government agent. Yeah. But the bullet time, the scene where he breaks in and he uses the small gangster as a shield, and he jumps over the bar. He's like, what's going on down there? And it's
great. It's a great book. I mean, there's not much innovation that you could do with that genre without it being something bonkers. So,
right,
so
like where
works.
you have the detectives being played by cats.
Yeah,
that's what makes.
Yeah, right. which is great. I just
so much. That takes it to a whole new level. So
even that, if Black Sad wasn't done with anthropomorphic animals, it would just be your standard sort of thing. It would be beautifully done. Right. But it's just your regular sort of, except they deal with a little bit like white supremacy and things like that, which are not necessarily subjects that these things deal with. But what's the angle you're going to use? And this one doesn't have angles. It doesn't play angles. It's a straightforward guy comes home. There's a femme fatale. She's trouble. He gets in trouble. Trouble. Guns. Boom, boom, boom. But it's beautiful.
Yeah. And I don't feel like there's enough of these kind of books. I mean, as I said, Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips, they've been doing it for years. But you look around, Are there other crime? And I mean, you don't need a ton of crime noir books, but it's good to have these things out there. Again, it expands the tent. It makes you want to, and this is one that's just like, we don't need a corny cliche or whatever. We're just going to tell a crime noir story and just go with it, which I just think is refreshing. This is a universe I would love to live in. And I think at the end of it, you could go on, you could have different stories because, to be blunt, Slick doesn't die. Caprice is still alive. They can still keep going. And I hope they do, because I think this is really great.
See, I actually have the exact opposite opinion, where I think this was great, but you said this is a place you'd want, universe you wouldn't mind going back to. Nope. This is something, if we read one of these books every 6 months, like, all right, we're going to come in, we're going to play with crime noir cliches. The plot is paper thin, but it's filled with twists and turns and, beautiful dames and dastardly criminals where everybody knows everybody's a bad guy and all that other fun stuff. It's fine. It's fun. The art is beautiful. I would not be able to read this on a consistent basis, though. Like, if I was in month to month, like, the strings would show themselves almost immediately. But, like I said, once or twice a year, you want to dip in and go into these noir things like, oh, man, this is like Parker, but, not as good as Parker. But, this is lots of fun, and you get the same feels and the moods and all of those things. But, yeah, it's, like I said, it's a sometimes food.
Okay.
Where, as cool as it is, I could see it losing its cool. It's like, whenever you meet the cool guy and get to know them, like, wait a minute, you're not actually all that cool. You're kind of sad. You drink too much. You need some mystique here.
All right. Well, J.A., you're a big crime noir guy, and this was the first time that you read it. What were your thoughts?
I love the art. The story was a bit paint by numbers, but that doesn't mean that it's bad. I love the use of color just to accent stuff, though as it went on, I wondered if it became too much of a shtick. I guess I could see Chad's point. That doesn't mean it wasn't a good, fun, fast read. Could I read more of them? Sure. But I think if you do more issues of this or more stories, it becomes very much pulpy. I guess this is what that is. And then the overall impact of it would be lessened. I think some of what makes this so good is that it's so limited. And if we had like 20 issues of the same story going on, it would be less impactful because it would be the same story over and over again.
Yeah.
Different characters, but the same sort of tropes rolled out.
I think you got our cover blurb, Hard Case Crime. This is what that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hard-boiled crime noir done really, really well, really stylishly and fun and really fun to read. But again, not for the kiddies.
No, not for the kiddies.
No, not at all. Not at all. But I before we go to break, I did want to ask Mikey. So there's that one gangster that shows up.
It comes in at the end in the second.
In the second book, he comes in. He's the main enforcer of the other big gangster that Rex wants Slick to steal this painting off of in this comedy of errors. And he comes in. And he's got the black suit, and he's got the gaunt face, like the very angular face. And is that not Torpedo?
Oh yeah, and he's speaking Italian, which is really funny.
Right.
Through the whole thing. Yeah, it definitely is. He's got the same kind of.
Could you imagine like seeing the other side of that story where like it's from the Torpedo's end where he gets called to this, and the guy gets away, and I I like that. I like the fact that Marini. I mean, again, Torpedo is such an institution. That I'm glad that he took a page from that and said, I'm going to throw a Torpedo character in here. Why not? Like, I mean, it makes sense. It made sense for the story. It wasn't like it just came out of nowhere. But hopefully for those people reading, maybe you'll check out some Torpedo. Maybe we should have that episode finally. We should redo that this year. Maybe.
Yeah. There's actually a new Torpedo book that is in the midst of coming out right now. It's called Torpedo 1972. It's from a Blaze Comics, which I'm not familiar with. And it takes place in 1972. So it's got Lucas Torelli, who is Torpedo. He's like at the end of he's like old and stuff now. So yeah, so we could always do that. So I think it's like 6 issues or something.
I think on that tip, I think we'll go ahead and get to recommendations and ratings right after this, so stay tuned.
LastComicShopPodcast.com is the destination for all things shop. Plan your week with upcoming show schedules, the latest books, recommendations, and chatter from the crew. Subscribe to the show on all major podcasting platforms from one convenient location. Show your support and browse the merch store. T-shirts, tanks, hoodies for the fam, coffee mugs, magnets, totes, and more. Check out exclusive content through the show's YouTube channel and follow the pod on Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, and others. All this and so much more at www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com. www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com.
Being a PI, you learn fast what seems like a normal case never is. You never realize how much you're going to need your friends. You can never guess how near your enemies are. And you never know who to trust. Now I'm chasing down an ancient artifact, the only thing that can stop this newly unearthed terror. It sounds crazy, but I'm not thinking how nuts it all is. All I can think about is the only man who's ever managed to grab my heart is right at the heart of this mystery. And why? Every time my heart gets involved in anything, there's always a monster waiting in the shadows to break it.
Ripped from the pages of the self-titled comic book comes Dash, a new queer supernatural noir podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Podcast Dash, on Instagram at dash.noir, or wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, see you guys. We's back with more in the Last Comic Shop. Come on down. I'll get you the cab. It's going to be right around the corner. You hear me, Mikey? We're going to get the dames. They're going to come for the 1 out of 4 scales. My own these guys. Yeah. All right. Hey, JAs, what's you got for us this week's?
Are you supposed to be a gangster or Stan Lee?
It's so many S's and I hate it so much. I hate it so much.
Anyways, we're going to go. This was sort of very stylistic. That actually reminded me a lot of Sin City in their use of color or lack of color, or just using a highlight or two. So 1 out of 4 red highlights.
The children's magazine with the search and finds and the interesting articles for kids.
And Goofus and Gallant.
I was thinking again, it came out of a bottle or something. Do the drapes match the
highlights
carpet?
in your hair? Andrew,
which highlight did you have the scalping? I forget.
In any case, we're gonna start off with Mikey. Mikey, what'd you think of this? How many red highlights you giving it?
And Slick's name is Terry, which I think is really funny. I mean,
Caprice is Deb. Don't forget about Deb.
Deb and Terry and Deb. It wouldn't see Slick and Caprice. That's film noir. Terry and Deb.
That's the suburbs.
Those are people your mom and dad worked with. You know, like Terry and Deb. Like,
did you hear about Terry and Deb?
Yeah.
They went on vacation to Toronto last year.
You know, we were we play bridge with Terry and Deb every Friday.
And then that damned Hungarian native came and scalped him.
That's right. No, so I mean, I give it a strong 3. The only reason it's not really a 4 is just because it's pretty paint by numbers, but the actual plot is paint by numbers. The art is certainly not. Like we've all said it. It does the thing really, really well. So yeah, that's a strong 3.5, whatever. It's good. Just buy the book and read it. Buy the book and read it.
Okay. Chad, you're up next. What do you got?
Yeah, man. I'm a sucker for watercolors. I think the art is beautiful in this book. And I have that itch from time to time where it's like, oh, crime noir, that's fun. That'll be a good time. And this was a good time. As a matter of fact, I was all set to just like how fantastic this was. And then I was doing some quick research and someone was like, yeah, it borders on self-parody. And I was like, wait, yeah, it does. Like, oh no, that kind of cracked it for me because the art was fun, but I can't get over how there's a reason crime noir is a thing. I think what puts the Brubaker and Phillips stuff in the Darwin Cook stuff, above your standard crime noir is that they managed to not break it, but at the same time, you feel like they're expanding on it. Whereas this, I feel like it's homaging a lot of different stuff. And so I hate to sound as down on it as I do, because I enjoyed my time with it. Like I said earlier, would I want to read this if it came out every month? Nah, I'd get real bored with it real fast. So it's somewhere in that 3.25 range for me, where it's real good, and I would encourage folks to read it and check it out. But yeah, it's a sometimes food. Like, you couldn't keep this act up for more than 2 issues, I don't think, before it would get stale.
Well, I'll go next, and I'm going to give it a 4. I really, really love this book, and it's for the reasons that I love comic books, right? I've said on this show many, many times that my favorite comic books to read are pretty much escapism. Anytime I can just escape and just enjoy, and this was kind of like a movie. It was like a popcorn munching movie, and I didn't really have to think about it too much, but I didn't really want to think about it. It just had sex and violence and awesome characters and cool dialogue and interesting, segments from one to the next, and everything kind of seemed to flow. And when I said that I would read this again, or I'd want to stay in this world, I think what I'm trying to say is, at the end of this book, there's an opportunity for a sequel, and I wouldn't mind a sequel. Would I want this to be a monthly title? No, but would I want to see, Noir Burlesque 2? In 2 or 3 years, have another one come out like this? Absolutely. Especially with this fantastic art. I'd like to revisit these characters in a couple years. And so I think that's what I'm trying to say when I say I would like to come back to this world. Not immediately, but I would like to come back to this world eventually.
Legacy numbering dictates that would be Noir Burlesque number 3. We had Noir Burlesque 1.
That's true. Good point, Chad. But no, it's just... Everybody knows I'm a horny old goat, and Caprice was beautiful to look at in this thing. She was that, and you know what? Terry was beautiful to look at too. Come on now, he was a tall drink of water.
Heck yeah, man.
That was good stuff. So, sometimes it's just all right, let's go with this. Skinamax, put it on. It's 11 o'clock at night. We're enjoying this. It is a solid 4. Pick it up, especially if you don't like comics. If you're listening to because you're listening,
especially if you don't like these things.
No. If you came to this show because you like the true crime stuff at the beginning, this is a book for you. Pick it up, read it. Because I'm sure that some of Nicole's friends are listening right now because they knew that she was doing this true crime stuff at the beginning. So I hope they pick up this book and they read it. J.A.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 3.25. I think the art is definitely a 4. The writing, hits all the tropes and it's witty. So I'm going to give it that. But again, it's not elevating the genre the way Black Sad does, or the way that some of the Sean Phillips and Ed Brubaker stuff does. But it's great. It's fun. As you said, Andrew, it's a bit of a popcorn. I was reading it, and I had on Spotify a public playlist called Detective Noir, Neo-Noir, Jazz, Crime Jazz, which has the subheading, Thank God for the Rain, which has helped wash away the garbage and trash off the sidewalks.
Yeah, that's right.
It's that kind of feel, crime noir. It's so much about style as much as it is about substance. So This has it in droves. 3.25. A fun read. Glad we did it. Ready for part 3 next year at some point.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's now time for other books that you should get ready for. That's our recommendations. Yes, this is the time of every single show where you can pick up other comic books in addition to Noir Burlesque, which, again, I highly recommend. If you know of somebody that just likes to read, beach reads or something, get them Noir Burlesque. Have them read it. It's a sultry, action-packed romp. It's great. But
not if they're at the beach with the kids. They're going to turn the page and get to what? She's in the tub with what?
All right. But here are some other books that we hope that you check out. And we're going to go ahead and start off with J.A. He finished off our ratings. He's going to start our recommendations. What you got for us, sir?
All right. So I am recommending another English translation of a French comic book. This is The Killer by Matz and artist Luc Jacquemont. It was, you might be familiar with the Netflix movie of the same name, which was based on this comic book, The Killer. And it's about an initially unnamed contract killer who goes about his business killing people for money. And, how is he going to deal with the fact that he has a amount of money set in mind that he wants to make and live off of, and people are trying to track him down and set him up. He's got an agent who tries to set him up, and he has to kill him and then figure out why he was trying to get set up. And there's a cop who chases him that he kills, and it's very, very European, not dissimilar to Noir Burlesque. Is just beautiful artwork, understated coloring, and it was put out in English by Archia Studio Press, which is, I think, an imprint of Boom Studios. So you can get it in a bunch of trades, or you can get them all combined into one giant omnibus, which essentially combines, I think, 5 volumes of the collected editions that were originally done in French.
Wow. I'm going to have to check that out. That's super cool.
I second that. That's a really good series. Yeah, very well done.
Well, Mikey, you're up next. What do you got for us?
Well, since we mentioned it this earlier, this isn't my recommendation, but I do recommend looking up Enrico Marini's Eagles of Rome and the Scorpion. I said the Raven before, it's the Scorpion. They're Scorpion's from like 2008 or something. Eagles of Rome is from like 2015, and there's like 6 volumes of Eagles of Rome written by other people. Full color artwork in this case. So good, man. Like so good. But anyway, and there you can find English translations. I'm going to be recommending this volume of Johnny Dynamite strips from the 1950s pre-code Johnny Dynamite strips by Pete Morisi and written by Ken Fitch. This volume has a really cool introduction by Max Allan Collins, which talks a lot about Pete Morisi and his work and the character of Johnny Dynamite, and another smaller introduction by Terry Beattie, as well as a new story featuring Johnny Dynamite and Max Allan Collins' character, Miss Tree, in the end. And it's really good stuff. Tough guy, Mickey Spillane type stuff with a one-eyed detective character. So real good stuff.
All right. Well, I think we've got a third crime noir book up on the next, and that comes from Chad Smith. Chad, what do you got for us?
So I'm going to go a mix of my modern tastes and some classic sensibilities. I'm going to talk about Will Eisner's The Spirit, but when Francesco Francavilla took over for The Corpse Makers. And so you get a bunch of unexpected disappearances, deaths in Central City, and then all of a sudden Ebony White disappears. And who has to come to the rescue but everybody's favorite Will Eisner creation, The Spirit. It's Francesca Francavilla art. It's 120 pages of awesomeness. If you're feeling noir, I definitely recommend it. You dip into that stylistic mode, and it's just fun. It's fun and beautiful. And so it came out of Dynamite Studios circa 2019-ish, I think is when this collection was printed. So it is Will Eisner's Spirit, The Corpse Makers.
Okay. And with my recommendation, we're going to move as far away from crime noir as possible into the worlds of fantasy. The big thing over the last holiday season was everybody was seeing Wicked, right? And I was like, wow, this is a great opportunity for folks out there to come into the comic book tent by reading something that inspired Wicked, and that is The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by Eric Shanover with wonderful, magnificent art by Scotty Young. Yes, this is the collection that Scotty Young painstakingly and beautifully remastered. You can start with The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, you can go into the marvelous Land of Oz, and then Ozma, and then just continue with that particular series for 6 volumes. Even if you've seen The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, the movie, you really haven't experienced it until you've read the book, then you should really read this. This is a really approachable way of digesting The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. It won Eisner's for Best Limited Series as well as Best Publication for Kids. So it's not only for all of you adults out there, but it's also for your kids. Pick this up, read it with your kids. Again, Wicked's going to be coming out on DVD just next month in March. So, like, this is a great opportunity to get it for your kids and get it for you and just read the original L. Frank Baum, Wonderful Wizard of Oz. As I said, it was translated and made into wonderful comic book form by Eric Schanauer and Scotty Young.
Like the original movie, does this also go really well with Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon?
I'm sure you could listen to that while you're reading it, but it's got the silver shoes in this. You find out that like the monkeys aren't really the Wicked Witch of the West. There was a magic helmet that she used to bring the monkeys there once in a while. Yeah, it's good.
And there were no ruby slippers. The slippers were silver in the books. They made them ruby for the movie to show off what Technicolor could do.
Yeah, same reason why there was a green lightsaber instead of a blue one in Return of the Jedi.
That's right.
Needed to show against the blue background better.
Mm-hmm. That Wizard of Oz, that's when I realized Scotty Young, wow, he's more than just, silly kitty covers. He's a great storyteller.
Oh, he is.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes. And as I said, there's 6 volumes of this. So you pick up the first one, and then you're in. You're in for a good solid month and a half. You just continue reading these. They're great.
The second one, Marvelous Land of... I've read all the original L. Frank Baum books, and there's like 9 of them. I can't remember. But the second one, Marvelous Land of Oz, is actually better. It's got like Jack Pumpkinhead and Mombi, and I don't think Dorothy's in it at all. Tip's the main character. Yeah, TikTok and stuff like that, like good stuff.
Yeah. Speaking of which, you should go back and rewatch The Return to Oz. That's actually
great movie.
Not a bad movie at all.
No.
Got really crapped on back in the day. But it's good. It's good. But something else that's good is just The Last Comic Shop. We hope you don't crap on us. We hope you come back next week and the week after that and the week after that. And you can do that by rate, reviewing, and subscribing over at www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com. It's a fantastic website where you get all the links to all of those platforms where podcasts live. You can subscribe right then and there, or you can check us out on YouTube. We've got a growing YouTube community. Lots of people coming around for those comic book covers well into 2025 here, still building up that audience. And man, people love those comic book covers. So thanks so much to Chad Smith for continuing to come up with those, Mikey, for those comic covers you come up with and your collections.
We both have high-tech security, motherfucker.
That's right, we do.
Don't even think about it, you crime noir crimesters.
That's true. But yeah, no, I hope that you continue to come back to The Last Comic Shop and www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com for what else, Chad?
I've got dogs and bees. Dogs with bees in their mouths. When they bark, they spit bees at you.
Not the bees! Not the bees! No!
All comes back to Nick Cage.
Fuck the bees! Yeah.
Anyway, I know what I don't have, and that's a train of thought. You can always check us out on the socials, and then while we are the Last Comic Shop podcast, we don't want to be the Last Comic Shop, so we encourage you guys to get out there to your local stores where you could find things potentially like Noir Burlesque, or you could find things like The Killer from Archaea, or The Corpse Makers from the Spirit there and Francesco Francavilla, or maybe you want to go with Johnny Dynamite featuring those 1950s stories, or wrap things up with that Schanauer and Young Wizard of Oz run, which they came out with a nice, tidy little omnibus of that a few years back that I passed on, and I still regret it. But all that and more waits for you at your local comic shop. Then circle back to www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com, where you can find what else waiting for you there, J.A.
Always have a link to our merch store. You can get T-shirts, coffee mugs, tote bags, hats, all manner of Last Comic Shop podcast merch. Plus, this week only, Zoot Suits. That's right. Do you need a pinstripe suit that's a little bit large with baggy pants that makes you kind of look like Hammer, except cooler, that goes with the...
Can't be done.
Hammer, don't hurt him.
That's right.
Please. Please, Hammer.
Imagine that crime noir. Just MC Hammer The Hammer comes to the town.
Here comes Mike Hammer. with
his... Is this the Hammer from the animated series where he had the magic talking shoes?
Good pull on
Nice.
that. I think there was an animated James Brown in that show too.
Yes, I believe so.
Really, any case, we're getting off topic. Mikey, where can folks find all of their comic book supplies at a really cheap cost using a certain code?
Yes, yeah, you'd want to go to BCW Supplies, and it's the promo code is LCS Pod, and it saves you dough on things like comic book boxes and self-sealing bags, which are the greatest thing in the world. I don't care what anybody says. And backing boards and anything that you might need. And they have Golden Age size, they have Silver Age size, they have magazine size, they have anything you could ask for. And every time you use promo code LCSPOD, LCSPOD, you get a discount, and we get a little kickback. So do it!
There you go. Keep save that scratch and keep your dames happy so they don't double cross you.
That's right.
Like all the ones in these stories.
That's right. And so and even things that'll keep people from stealing it from your house.
Yeah, gotta protect those comic books so that if they get stolen and end up in a storage locker, at least they'll be right.
If Nicolas Cage had used our promo code,
exactly,
he would have been a lot.
He could have gotten the dogs or the bees or the dogs with the bees. And I don't even know if BCW says those, but you can check it out. Go out to their website, see if they have dogs or dogs with bees.
Embed a tracking thingy in your box.
That's right.
You don't have to get a tracking device to find us, and we hope that you come back next week. Until then, I was the host with most, Andy Larson. I'm joined by Jay Scott, Chad Smith, and the wonderful Mikey Wood, and we hope that you stay safe. Stay crime noirish. Stay in black and white. Like, go stand in, like, the shadows or in half hidden in light.
I would not recommend this. And I've read these stories. It doesn't end well for anybody. It
ended well for Slick. Slick got all the. You got the day.
No, because the Italian mob is coming after him now.
Yeah, he's playing baseball with his nephew, and he's got a price on his head.
One thing is for sure. Remember, the good thing about gangsters is they're always super helpful. They're always coming up to you and asking what your problem is.
What's your problem?
What's your problem? Hey, come here. What are you looking at? Is that nice over there?
What are you looking at?
I'm just curious.
Do I amuse you? Why, yes, Mr. Pesci. Yes, you do. I enjoy your work.
Do I amuse you? Am I funny?
Was a 2025 Black Angus production.